You can follow Mike on Twitter at MikeGriffith32. Read him in the AJC. And he's with us now on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, DawgNation portion of the AJC. What's up, Mike? How are you?
Doing well, guys. Thank you. Just getting back from Gainesville. Had the first-year Coach of the Year ceremony last night with Coach Spurrier and Chris Doring, and got to see Josh Heupel and Shane Beamer. So a lot of SEC action last night, man.
Yeah, we were actually talking about that. I was real critical of the Heupel hire. I thought that was a lazy hire by Tennessee and Danny White. As of 1 year in, I have got a lot of egg on my face on that one. That guy had a pretty good year.
Well, he didn't win the press conference.
I know,
but you get to know Josh, and that's kind of how Josh is. I mean, he's the quarterback version of Philip Fulmer, and all those years I covered Tennessee. I mean, Fulmer has a pretty interesting and dynamic personality, but you would never get that from his interviews because, Coach Fulmer is a guy that understands that in the South, when you're a head football coach in an SEC school, you're an ambassador for the whole state. You're a statesman of sorts, and they're not going to play the fun and games that Lane Kiffin is, right? They're going to be, I think that they're going to have a lot of dignity about them. I think they're going to be, for the most part, conservative in what they say, vanilla perhaps even. And I think that's the way a lot of people want their coaches to be in the SEC. I mean, it makes it fun to have a guy like Lane Kiffin that, the frat guy that never grew up or whatever, his Twitter account's exciting. And, Lane will say some smart aleck things on social media. He doesn't have a pulse in person, but on social media, he dazzles and he's fun. But at the end of the day, I wonder if that cost Lane some opportunities at a school like a Florida. Like maybe Florida's like, you know what, too much fun and games, right? Like I wonder, and whereas Josh, I think he fits Tennessee, but most importantly, guys, he found a way to win games and he found a way to score a lot of points and he did things differently, and that offense was different. He's got an exciting quarterback in Hendon Hooker. And so, that's why he was deserving. And then Shane Beamer, I mean, let's be honest. I don't think anybody thought Shane was going to win more than 3. I mean, we all like him. We love him. He's a great personality. But we all looked at it and shook our heads and said, poor Shane Beamer. But doggone if they didn't go out there and win some football games. And if it didn't work, and he's got this karma going, and I don't know if South Carolina can keep it up, but Landon Spencer Rattler, that's a pretty good start. So I'm intrigued to see what Shane will do. I'm intrigued to see what Josh will do. Kentucky carries a little bit of momentum, albeit they just lost their offensive coordinator to the Rams, but they returned their leading rusher and their quarterback. I think the SEC in Napier in Florida, he's out there hiring the world, trying to copy Nick Saban. I think the SEC East is going to have a little bit more bite in it next year, and I wouldn't be surprised if Georgia lost a game in the SEC East next year.
Hey, so Mike, interesting news coming out of Athens yesterday, and sticking with Georgia, offensive line coach Matt Luke stepping down. The reasons he cites, spend more time with the family. Really unfortunate, and Brown brought this up earlier in the show, that we speculate there could possibly be more. But is there anything more to the fact that he steps down late February than just wanting to spend more time with the family?
Well, I think it's a sign of the times, and I think if you want to say there's more to it, it's that Kirby is like Nick, and he works these guys really hard, and I mean really, really hard. Now, Nick and Kirby are going to work every bit as hard as the rest of the crew. That doesn't mean it's any easier not to have any family time and to be working those Friday nights or to be breaking down 4 games before you take your vacation like they do at Alabama or whatever. But it's like Nick said a couple years ago, and he was right. He said, I think it's funny. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but he said, I think it's funny that, all these people want to criticize how hard I make these guys work, and then they go somewhere else to start their programs, and they do the same thing that I did. And he's right? I mean, look, this is what it takes. If you want to win championships, if you want to be the best, this is what it takes. Now, that's not necessarily conducive to a good family life. That's not necessarily conducive to a healthy lifestyle. Working 16-hour days and eating food that you order out on. I mean, look, but this is the SEC, and it's the ultimate. And everybody's trying to win. All these fans think they've got a right of, we ought to be good. But somebody's got to lose. Everybody's trying to win. Everybody's putting a lot of money into it. Everybody's looking for an edge. And, there's only 24 hours in a day. And at some point, I think it takes a toll. And if you're Matt Luke, and then here's the other factor: coaches now making more money than they ever did. So there was a time they didn't have a choice; they had to keep working. Heck, a lot of these coaches would become ADs, but now these coaches make so much darn money. And I'm not saying they're not worth it. Obviously, the results speak for themselves in Alabama, that's for sure. But, you make enough money, you can walk away. If you're Matt Luke, you've been a head coach for a few years, whatever your buyout was, you made $900,000 the last 2 years. You got $2 or $3 million in the bank, and you think you need a break. Take a break, man. You're leaving with a championship ring, a great resume. Matt Luke can come back to college football whenever he wants on his terms. So I think it's a sign of the times as it is as much as anything else.
And several coaches have left that national championship staff, Mike. We see that happen almost annually now in Tuscaloosa, a little less this year than years past.
Sure.
How comfortable is Kirby really having to do this mass, reconstruction of his coaching staff, unlike he's had to do in the past?
Well, Kirby he doesn't care about comfortable. It is what it is. So we were talking to him about the mess of the NIL and signing. He said, "You guys call it a mess, but that's my world, and there's no reason, no sense in me complaining about it. I just got to get to work." Same way with Saban. I loved it when Saban. I'll never forget the spring media days a few years ago when Pruitt was down there and they just gotten the Brandon Kennedy kid from Alabama, and they wanted him to have immediate eligibility. And Jeremy was on his soapbox about how he transferred from Middle Tennessee State to Alabama back when I was covering the Tide. When Pruitt was the scout team defensive captain because he had a good football IQ, so he ran that scout team for Ivy Williams back in the day. And Greg Sankey, oh, me too. I was a transfer also. And Saban got in front of the room and said, "Are we sure we want to do this? We sure want to do this, guys? Because y'all are thinking there's going to be people that are going to leave my program. And there might be." He said, "But we're going to get some players too." And I remember thinking to myself, boy, I'm going to remember this. Because Nick is putting everybody on notice that if you want to open this door, we're going to find another way to kick your ass at Alabama. And that's exactly what they've done.
Mike Griffith is with us. You can follow Mike on Twitter at MikeGriffith32, DawgNation.com, part of the AJC. He's with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. I know JT Daniels is not a Georgia player anymore, but it's a guy you cover, and he's still in Athens there. Do you have any guess where that guy's playing next year?
Well, JT's situation is this. He's got to graduate before he's eligible to transfer because he's already transferred once.
Yeah.
So when he transfers, he's going to transfer as a grad transfer. Now, Ole Miss had some interest in him before Jackson Dart, but JT didn't want to commit, this early. He wants to scope everything out. This is his last chance. This has got to be a good fit. He thought he had a good deal at Georgia. They told him what kind of offense they were going to run, and injuries happened, and Kirby changed his mind and went with the walk-on that, runs the RPOs, right? When JT got signed up, it was, we're going to throw the ball all over the yard. We got Todd Monken, record-setting, offense with the Buccaneers, and things change, right? Varsity Blues, things change, Mark. And all of a sudden, JT doesn't fit what Kirby wants to do to the point that he's playing a walk-on. You're going, well, okay. So here's JT, incredibly talented guy. He might have won the Heisman Trophy if he would have stayed healthy last year when you think about it. His numbers were just stupid good. And the offense just was unbelievable when he was out there. But so you're asking me where he might go. Well, there's about 6 or 7 schools right now that I know he's talking to. Without getting into too many details, I think there's only a couple in the SEC that are on the board. And then outside the SEC, he's looking at some other Power 5 schools. But he's going to have to wait, I think, until maybe the end of spring. Because there's no sense in committing right now publicly because, you don't want to upset the apple cart of the guys that are already on the team, and then people transfer and they're going through spring drills and they're saying, why are we doing this if you're bringing in another quarterback that's not even here yet? So it's part of this whole new world that we're in with transfers and NIL and managing the locker room and roster management. It's a lot more complicated and complex than it ever was.
Does one sound like Barbron?
Is Auburn on the list? Jim wants to know.
No, I don't think so.
Wow,
I don't know where
good.
that came from, but no, I don't think so. I just don't see that. Look, who's he going to throw to? Look at poor Bo Nick. He's throwing to their best guy was a guy that couldn't get on the field at Georgia. No offense, but who the heck was Bo Nix going to, 2 years ago? I got to say this. And again, I mean, I'm not an Auburn beat. I was in the 90s. I covered Auburn. And, I still, there's still a part of me that watches Auburn and such good people, such a loyal, you guys know what a loyal fan base that is. I mean, every day they wake up and, they got to contend with Alabama. I mean, what a world to be in, But, I feel bad for this Bo Nix guy because 2 years ago, he got like 4 new starters on the offensive line. He ain't got no blocking. The offensive line was a joke. I mean, Gus had messed up the recruiting cycles, so he doesn't have any protection. And last year, he doesn't have any receivers. Everybody's like, it's all about Bo Nix. It's like, dude, you got to have a supporting cast. Listen, I'm as impressed with Bryce Young as anybody on the planet. And I mean, he was better than I ever thought he would be. I want to tell you that. I was wrong. I wondered if he could get through the year, but after watching Bryce, and I mean, the kid's magical. He really is. He's a great person. I talked with his dad. It's a great family. I mean, this guy is really, really special. But he wasn't good enough without his best players. All of a sudden, Bryce Young he threw that pick six. You think maybe that had something to do with the receiver? How about that drop pass inside the 5-yard line, right? But Bryce had won the Heisman, so we didn't turn on our heel and go, he's a terrible player. But poor Bo Nix, I mean, what's that guy had around him? So I'll be curious to see how Bo does up at at Oregon. And then as far as JT, why would you go to a place that you may not have enough weapons, to get her done? I mean, great example of, dating myself here, but Steve Young, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who was he, right? He goes to the 49ers, he's a Hall of Famer. So I think at quarterback, I think your supporting cast means a lot. And I think that's what JT's got to look for is a good supporting cast and a situation where he can have success. Yes, Auburn is a good football program, but I don't think he's planning on being around for more than a year. I don't think he wants to be part of a rebuild. And that's if you think Harson's even going to get, more than 1 year. I mean, I don't know. That whole situation is so shaky because of the way Auburn handled it. I feel bad for Brian Harsin. I mean, this guy starts next year dead man walking. I mean, I don't even know what saves his job, right? I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know the innards of that or the buyouts or any of that kind of thing, but doesn't he start the year on the hottest seat in the country?
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
are we to assume if Stetson Bennett stays healthy that he starts all 12 games?
Well, I don't know. Kirby loves this guy. He loves this guy. He in his eyes, he sees greatness. And I mean, he was good enough to win a national championship, and he did have an MVP performance against Michigan. I thought he played really well, but I'm not sure. I think in Kirby's mind, I think this is the guy Kirby wants. I mean, Monken said he was wrong. I mean, Stetson was ready to leave last summer. Monken had him 3rd or 4th on the depth chart, and Stetson goes into Kirby's office and says, "I want a chance to compete." And the head coach says, "Okay." And he's back on the team. He's the 3rd stringer. But then the week of the UAB game, the 2nd stringer, Carson Beck, all of a sudden, he's not the 2nd stringer. And Bennett's starting to go, wait a minute, when did it, we'd even asked Kirby, is Carson Beck the number 2? Kirby says, yeah, he's the number 2. But it was Bennett that started. And so, Kirby really likes this guy a lot. There's a connection there. There are a couple South Georgia guys. He likes the mobility that Stetson brings. He likes the play-action shot plays and the way Stetson runs those. He feels like it's a good fit for the offense. But when push comes to shove, the question is going to be, can Stetson do enough to carry the offense now that they don't have, and I'm assuming they don't have, the same caliber of defense? I mean, they lost so much in their front 7. They're going to have 4 first-round picks or 4 first or early second-round picks out of their front 7. I mean, this was arguably the best defensive front since 92 Bama. And you're losing most of those guys. So now maybe, like the championship game, Stetson really didn't get the motor going until late in the 3rd quarter against Alabama. They really hadn't done. Do you have that luxury now to wait until mid-3rd quarter to get your offense going? Will you have a defense, the Florida game, right? 3-0, 3 minutes left in the first half. The defense forces 3 turnovers, 21 points. If that magic's not there, do you have the time to stick with Stetson? And what does the offense look like? Pickens is gone, and, George was gone a lot last year, but, boy, when he came back, you saw that catch he made. And, that was a big catch to take the top off a defense like that in the first half. So I think the plan is for Stetson to be the guy. but they've got some really, really talented guys behind him, and Brock Vandegrift and Carson Beck. Carson was an Alabama commit at one point. Vandegrift was a 5-star Oklahoma commit. And so the question is, can Stetson elevate the offense enough? And if he can, he'll be the guy. And if he can't, I mean, Kirby's a businessman now. He loves you till he doesn't. He'll make the move if he's got to.
One basketball question before you leave. When Georgia gets eliminated from the SEC basketball tournament, does Tom Crean fly back with the team, or does he fly commercial somewhere else?
Yeah, I don't know. Boy, I'll tell you, that's so tough. You lose your 2 best players before the season starts. I mean, this is just not the league. This is not what it. This league ain't what it used to be. I mean, there's 4 or 5 games used to be 4 or 5 teams that just weren't worth the darn. And, now, I mean, boy, what a Shark Tank, right? Look around the league. Look at the guys Bruce Pearl's brought in. I tell you what, we're crying our tears for Auburn football. And meanwhile, Bruce is done amazing work. And I covered Bruce all 6 years at Tennessee when I was a beat writer there. And the best beat I was ever on, by the way, because every practice was open. When we went to Europe, he's like, yeah, you're going to hang with the team the whole time, ride the bus, walk through Prague with them. I want you to see it all, I mean, he's just a remarkable guy. I know you guys have felt and seen the charisma. I mean, I can't believe he's winning like this at Auburn. I just can't. I'm like, you got to be kidding. I thought the job was going to kill him. I called mutual friends. I said, I don't know about this job, man. Bruce has done some crazy good stuff, but this one might be too much. This one might be too. And doggone, if he didn't have the Auburn Tigers ranked number 1 and in the Final Four. I'm like, you remember that commercial where the guy wakes up in the time warp, the SEC shorts, and he's telling everybody Bruce is, and people think he's crazy? I mean, I would have, and listen, I'm the biggest advocate for Pearl because I saw what he did firsthand at Tennessee, but I would have never believed it. Now, conversely, Crean has not been able to do that at Georgia. The Georgia culture is such, they've won 1 regular season title in the history of that school. Think about that. That's not a coaching issue. That's a culture issue. And it comes down to this. Do you care enough to invest in your program? And you can interpret that however you want. But at the end of the day, you got to get players. And I know this. Up there at Kentucky, they're driving Porsches now. I'm not exaggerating. They got a kid with a Porsche NIL deal at Kentucky. And if you think that's something, that's just the tip of the iceberg up there. I mean, come on now. They invest. You want to be invested? Kentucky, right? And that's who you got to beat now. So, Georgia can change coaches and play musical chairs all they want. But until they invest in the program, they're not going to win games without players. You coach them up. And Crean's a great X's and O's guy. I mean, he darn near beat Auburn a couple weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. Did beat Alabama. He didn't do it because they had better players. He did it because he's a hell of a coach. But if you don't got players, you can't win consistently. And they don't have players. So Georgia's got a decision to make. Yeah, you can hire somebody else. But at some point, the administration's got to look in the mirror and say, all right, what do we need to do? Or the quote-unquote basketball community, the sort that exists at Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, the basketball community that helps ensure you have enough talent needs to form or emerge for Georgia to get on the same stage as the rest of the teams in the SEC.
Read Mike at DawgNation.com. SEC Network's where you see him. Follow him on Twitter at Mike Griffith32. Mike, thanks for the time. Always great talking with you.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
All right, man. You too, Mike. With us on the that was a weird one. Mike with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline.